Okay, I've been looking for another project, and I think I found one. I've been kind of putzing around on YouTube looking for different, woodworking ideas. And anyway, what I've got here to start with is a piece of half-inch thick oak, which I just found at local hardware store. You can get these back in the lumber section there, or a craft woods store. Anyway, I am going to turn this into a box. So with that, that's really all there is to say for right now, but I will come back and show you what it's looked like after I've done a little bit of milling. So I will talk to you in a few. Bye. Okay, here's what I did with that board that I broke down. And what I ended up milling were 4 pieces that are about about 4 inches long, and you can see the length right there. It goes from 18 just to the 22 mark. Yeah. And the length on these, however, isn't important. However, what is important is that all 4 of these are the same length, and that these other 2 pieces that you'll notice do not have miters on them are the same length, or at least within a hair or 2 of being the same length as these other 4 pieces. Now these 4 pieces, I did cut 45-degree miters on them. However, you don't have to do that for this project. You can leave the ends squared off, but if you do that, you've got to change a little bit of what you're doing. Now, again, the length on these really isn't important. These, again, 4 inches long, so you're going to get 8 inches long. But what the plan is, I'm going to put some more wood in between these, and clamp them all together. So when I do that, I'm going to have some pieces that are about, total length is going to be around 9 inches, probably just shy of 9 inches, but around 9 inches. So, and I'm going to do the same thing with these 2 pieces right here. Now, okay, here's my next step, and what I did is I went out on my table saw and I cut 3 pieces of cherry to, well, let's see, I think these are 3/4 of an inch wide. Yeah, 3/4 of an inch wide, and I cut 2 of them just half an inch thick, and that's the same thickness as the oak I'm using. The 3rd one, I ended up having to cut it a little larger because there's no way I could safely cut it down to the half inch, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to, after I glue this one up, I'll be able to take this excess material down with a sander. This, on the other hand, because of the way I have to glue it up, it's going to be a little tricky, and that means I need to make sure that the thickness of the cherry is very, very close to the thickness of the oak. Now, I think you might be seeing where I'm going with this, but basically, let me get a good close-up here. The oak, as you can see, it's oak. Nothing wrong with it. It's just got a very open green, very wild green, kind of a wild green to it, and it's, at least under the light, it's a fairly bright color. The cherry, on the other hand, is a little bit darker, and if you take a closer look at it, you can see that the green is very, very tight and very smooth. So the plan is to sandwich this cherry with the green running vertically against the oak with the green running horizontally. So anyway, that piece is going to be pretty easy to glue up, flat size everything. This piece is going to be a little trickier, and I'll talk about that in the next part. Bye. Okay, you may be wondering what you're looking at, and what it is my glue up for these pieces with the miters. Now, you can see I've got clamps going in 2 different directions. I got them going vertically, and I've got them going horizontally. And the reason for these vertical clamps is that if you glue up these corners, or excuse me, try to clamp up these corners with the pressure from the clamps, what's going to happen is right here, it's going to push this center up, just like that. And what you're going to end up with well, of course, you won't get a good clamp. Now, so anyway, what I did was I added these two clamps right here. I clamped them to the workpiece. The workpiece itself is on a flat piece of another flat piece of wood, piece of plywood, and then the clamps are on, attached to the bottom of the table. And yes, I do need to get a workbench, but I'm working on that. So anyway, I do have a piece of parchment paper under here, so after the glue is set, I'll just be able to lift, take the clamps off and lift this right up. And just to show you how well it worked, here's the other piece that I clamped up this morning, and I'm very happy with that. And there you go, you can see the grain patterns there. Now I do need to go back and clean the glue, the squeezed out glue up a little bit, but that's just going to take a few minutes of work with my random orbit sander. So anyway, that's it for now, and talk to you in a bit. Bye. Okay, here's the next step. I took all these glued up pieces and I went outside and first I sanded everything down so the cherry and the oak are perfectly flush, and I did that on all three pieces where I got the cherry and laid into the oak. Then, using my table saw, I went ahead and I re-ripped these pieces, all the mitered pieces, to length, or excuse me, not to length, but to width, and ended up just that's so I could get a nice square edge on each side. And I only took maybe 1/8 of an inch off of it. Let's see, yeah, 17, yeah, just maybe 1/8 of an inch. So so no problem there. So anyway, then I took my table saw and I lowered the blade down so there's only 1/4 inch extending above the fence, or excuse me, above the throat plate. And then I just made some repeated passes on the mitered pieces, and here's what it looks like from the end. Let's do it like that. So I took out about half the width of the mitered piece, so 1/4 inch, and that same little detail here is cut 1/4 inch deep. Now I did not, let's get a really close up. I did not use a dado blade or a router or anything like that. I certainly could have, but it was just simpler just to make repeated passes with the table saw and nibble it away until, and that's what we're going to end up getting, until this material is going to comfortably fit a piece of 1/4 inch thick oak plywood. So with that, that's the next couple of steps, and I will be back and talk to you in a bit. Okay, here's the next step that I did. Anyway, I needed a good flat surface to lay this out on, so I used a piece of laminate flooring that I had around. Like I said, working on the workbench. But anyway, what I did was I laid these 4 pieces out, just in a row, 1, 2, 3, 4. But on the back side of them, on what was going to be the outside, I made sure I put some painter's tape, and you can see it right there. And that is going to hold them together while I actually do the glue up. Then before I put any glue on, I also put painter's tape on the inside, just on the inside of where the joint would be. That way, any glue squeeze out I got would not get on the wood, and it's going to really minimize that amount of cleanup I have to do. So I smeared, well, let's use this as an example. What I did was, again, the painter's tape is there, so I smeared glue on the bevel, on the miter cut that I had here on both sides, plenty of glue, and then basically I just folded this up, in a line. Anyway, it was oriented like this, so I folded it up, and after I folded it up, everything was pretty snug. I used I made sure everything was taped up. I got the glue joints as tight as I could. And then I went ahead and grabbed my band clamp and cranked that down, and everything's lined up as best as I can tell. Everything's lined up. I'll find out for sure when I get it outside tomorrow, or when I unclamp it tomorrow. So anyway, that was the next step, and so far I think it's going pretty well. So I will talk to you later. Okay, here's the next step. As you can see, I've got the clamps off of this, and it's actually looking pretty good. I've got the tape off it as well. It's a little rough in a couple of spots because from where the oak chipped out, but I'm going to take care of that during the finishing processes. But anyway, I went ahead and before I clamped it up, I sanded it to 220 on both the inside and the outside pieces except for the miter faces. Okay, and then after I got the clamps off, I took it and I put this on my belt sander, and I made sure that both the top and the bottom was flat. And it's very important for the top to be flat because you're going to have to put the top, you're going to end up putting the top on, and the top is going to get glued right here, and then later on I'm going to end up cutting it about right here on the table saw to actually make the box. But anyway, the top's going to go on next, and that's going to be pretty simple. But before I do that, let me show you the detail for the oak, for the plywood on the bottom. So anyway, like I said, I've got some oak plywood here, and I'm just going to cut a piece that fits right in this recess right here. And that's going to be a very simple job on the table saw. However, you don't want to do it before you've glued this up, because if you make a little error, you slip a little bit, then you're going to end up with a piece that's that's the wrong size. You're going to have to cut it down some more. So I'm just wanted to make sure I only had to do one cut. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and cut the oak to size. Get this bottom piece. Get this bottom piece of plywood cut to size, glue it in, glue the top on, clamp it back up, and then we'll go from there. So, talk to you in a bit. Okay, here we go, and this is after I've done the next step. I went ahead and took the clamps off, and then I took this bad boy outside, and I did a little work with some power tools. I took I put it on the table saw. Well, I took it out to my table saw, and I sanded it down so all the joints are flush, and you can see that. See if it'll focus here. Come on. Yeah, there we go. I think there we go. Yeah, you can see that where I joined the top to the base, it's almost invisible except for right there, and that's where the cherry end grain is meeting the cherry face grain or side grain right there. So so that's the top. And again, I sanded it all smooth all the way down to 220 with the power sander. Then, or excuse me, I sanded it all down with I sanded it all down to 220 with the power sander. Then put it on the table saw, and I ran it through the table saw, and I cut the lid off of it. So, however, you'll notice that I cut the lid off a little bit higher than I did than where I glued it up, and there's about 3/4 of an inch right there. So the height right here, the overall height is not quite 4 inches. I cut it off right here about 2.5 inches up. So this is a little bit over, just a little bit under 1.5 inches right here. So anyway, the next step is to put a little bit of hardware on here, and or at least set up the hardware, and then finish it. So talk to you in a bit. Bye. Okay, I'm not masking this off for any reason. What I'm doing actually is I've got some blue tape on here to hold the top to the bottom while I do what I'm doing here. What I'm doing here is actually marking out the holes for these little brass hinges that I have. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to take a nail, and I'm just going to center it in this hole, in the hole right here. Give it a couple thwacks with a hammer, just to get a spot where I can start my drill bit. So when I start actually working the drill bit doesn't wander around on me. So anyway, I'm going to pre-mark all 4 holes on here. Then after I do that, I'm going to pre-drill the holes. And remember, I can only go about 1/4 inch deep because this wood is only 1/2 inch deep, but that should not be a problem with these little screws. And then after that, I'm going to put some finish on it. So talk to you in a moment. Bye. Okay, there it is. I was getting really, really close to finishing this up when I got home from work tonight. So I decided, you know what, let's go ahead and finish it up and, see how it looks. So, you know what, first time really doing a little box like this, and there's already some things I figured out I could have done better. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with the results, although I think I need to go back and put an extra coat of the finish on. And speaking of which, this is what I used for the finish, was just some spray-on polyurethane. I put on 2 coats, and it's hard to see under the lighting right here, but it really brought out the red on the oak. Let's see if I can get a better shot. Probably not, but not under this lighting at least, but you can see pretty good contrast between the oak and the cherry. But anyway, I put on 2 coats of the polyurethane, then went out, buffed it with some really fine sandpaper. I think I used 800 grit because that was what was on the top of the stack. And then I put 1 more coat of the polyurethane on. Now it does say if you can't coat, within a couple of hours, you got to wait a couple of days to recoat. And I think I'll probably do that. Just give it a couple of days, let what's on here cure, and then buff it out again with some more sandpaper, and then put another coat of 2 of the polyurethane on there. I think it's going to end up looking really, really good. So anyway, I went ahead, got the hinges on, and that's it. It's kind of a long, skinny box. I don't think you can keep much more in there than pencils or maybe a handful of dice or something like that. But you know what? Yeah, no complaints. I had the wood laying around, and glad I did it. So, bye. Or, sorry, talk to you later. Bye.